All right, grown-ups, it's just our time. I love the babies, but to help you, I gotta speak my mind. This segment's here to help you grow with book reviews, lessons, and things you'll be glad to know. If your little one's restless or looking to play, send them to my other playlist. The read-alouds there will brighten their day. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Teacher Lady Show. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Behind the Book. I'm Miss Erica, the Teacher Lady, your fairy godparent when it comes to sharing joyful stories and growing young minds. Now, every single week on the Teacher Lady Show, we tackle a new topic. And this week's topic is all about managing trauma. We want to support our children as they come across different difficult situations and are trying to figure out how to cope and manage. And of course, we're using picture books to be able to do so. Now, this week's featured book is A Terrible Thing Happened. If you have not done so yet, be sure to check out the read aloud of this story first over on the Teacher Lady Reads playlist, and then come back here for the Behind the Book review so that you have better context. On this review, we'll be going over the glows, what I think was done well, the grows, what I think could have been done differently, who this book is for, and how to utilize it as a resource to have a more robust conversation with your child. All in this episode of Behind the Book, where we go beyond the pages to get to the heart of the story. Summary in my own words. A Terrible Thing Happened is the story of one raccoon who saw something bad. The book doesn't specify what, but this terrible thing completely changed his personality, his thought processes, and how he treated people. And it takes us on a journey of how he starts to get better and feel like himself again. Take-home message for the story. The take-home message for the story is that sometimes hurtful and painful things take place, and there are ways in which we can get better. By the end of the story, he ends up seeing Miss Maple, who we can only assume is a therapist or a counselor, and that person really helps him to work through his emotions so that he can start to feel better. In terms of target age group, I would say 5 years old is appropriate. The text is very simple, and overall, it feels like the goal of the book is to make sure that children understand that when bad or hard things happen, they are not to blame, and there are ways that we can work through it. Who this book is for. This book is for any person who works with children from vulnerable communities, who work with children from underserved communities, who work with children who have experienced things like violence or accidents, things of that nature. It definitely is a book that lets us know the importance of getting help and seeking help, and what we do when we no longer feel like ourselves after a bad thing happens. And so those are the children that I would recommend have this book available to them. Glows. In terms of glows, I really appreciated the fact that there was a lot of honesty around how the raccoon was feeling after experiencing this specific trauma, okay? It shows us how he was friendly, but now he's angry, how his head is hurting, his stomach is hurting him. There are all of these issues that he didn't have before this thing took place. And so it walks us through that journey. And I think that that's very helpful because as children experience trauma, even as adults, as we experience trauma, to be able to recognize that when we're no longer behaving like our regular self, there's an underlying issue and we should seek help is a very important message. Grows. In terms of grows, there aren't many for me. One of the things that I wish would have been better explained is some things that could be the terrible things. So throughout the book, it's referenced that a terrible thing happened. We don't know what that terrible thing is. And I think when it comes to children, having examples would be very helpful. Now, on the back of the book, it does say this gently told story is for children who have witnessed any kind of violent or traumatic episode, physical abuse, school or gang violence, accidents, homicide, suicide, natural disasters, and more. I think that there's a way to incorporate that into the actual story so that children understand what are some things that could traumatize them and what we're referencing when we say a terrible thing happened. Was a terrible thing that he dropped an ice cream cone on the floor, or was a terrible thing that you saw somebody get beat up and hit on? So I think bringing that in and making that clear will be helpful. Also, it's never specified that Miss Maple, who was the person that he's meeting with and helping him, is a therapist or a counselor. And I also think that would have been helpful. And then lastly, in the back of the book, I would have loved additional resources to help parents, help counselors, help whoever support children through these processes. Overall, this was an excellent story. It really does get you to thinking about what your child might be experiencing, and it gives perspective to parents, which brings me to discussion points to have with your child. If your child is changing in terms of their friendliness, their kindness, their thoughtfulness, if you're noticing negative attributes about your child that were never there before, one, recognize it could be hormonal. As children change and develop and grow, all sorts of wacky things start happening within their bodies. And for two, it could be that something took place that they are not speaking about. So I would use this book as almost like a vessel to figure out what is going on with my child so that I can best support them. This book is definitely a resource that people should have available. We all experience traumatic things and we all deal and cope with those traumatic things differently. But understanding that trauma does not have to stay in your body. You don't have to think about it forever. There is a way to start to get better. It's really beautiful. And this book definitely provided that reminder. Thank you so much for learning with me, for growing with me, and for being part of this book community. If you have not done so, be sure to check out the read aloud of this book. You can also purchase your copy in the description below. Here's the time that I tell you that I am also an author and illustrator and ask that you check out my work, as well as the Empathy Library, which is a pay-it-forward program that gets books to children in need on purpose. Those books reflect their identity, okay? So check out all of the things. Thank you for learning with me, for growing with me, for being part of my community. Until next time, you remember to enjoy the moment or go be a joy in the moment. Bye!